My son Adrian had always been careful about who he brought into our family, but when he introduced his fiancée, Eliza, he seemed almost nervous. She was beautiful, polite, and completely unlike anyone I'd ever met, but my instincts screamed at me that something was off. At 62, after years of navigating life's challenges, I thought I could recognize sincerity, and I couldn't ignore the unease growing in my chest. Adrian had insisted I trust him. "Mom, you'll love her. She's perfect for me," he said with that confident smile of his. But my gut told me otherwise. Why was it so hard to learn anything about her past? Why did she avoid personal questions so quickly? And most importantly, why had Adrian suddenly grown defensive when I mentioned meeting her friends? That Saturday, curiosity and a growing sense of caution won. I decided to follow her discreetly as she left her apartment. I trailed her through downtown, keeping to the shadows, careful not to be noticed. She walked with purpose, stopped at a coffee shop, then made a series of cryptic phone calls. Her behavior was meticulous, calculated, and utterly chilling. As I observed, I noticed small but strange details. A business card with a name I'd never seen before, a social media account under a slightly different identity, and subtle gestures that suggested she wasn't as innocent as she appeared. My mind raced back to stories I'd heard of people who built entire personas to manipulate unsuspecting families. Could Adrian's fiancé be hiding something dangerous? By the evening, I was exhausted but determined. I had to know the truth before it was too late. The engagement party was the next day, and my nerves tightened as I prepared myself for what might unfold. When Adrian introduced me to Eliza, she smiled warmly, but for just a fraction of a second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. A recognition, a knowing. She had been aware I was watching. Yet, she concealed it effortlessly, dazzling Adrian and the other guests with charm and grace. That night as I drove home, my mind wouldn't stop turning. I realized that I couldn't confront Adrian. Not yet. He was too blinded by love. My task was clear. Gather the evidence, observe quietly, and prepare for the moment when the truth could no longer be hidden. Because my instincts were rarely wrong. And this time they were screaming danger. The next morning I couldn't focus on anything. Every detail from yesterday's observation replayed in my mind. The way Eliza glanced around as if she expected someone, the subtle tapping of her phone, the coded phrases she used. Something about her was deliberately hidden, and I was determined to uncover it. I decided to start small. I researched her background online, piecing together fragments of social media, public records, and news articles. But nothing added up. Eliza seemed to exist in fragments like pieces of a puzzle that never fit. No school records, gaps in employment history, names that changed slightly from one source to another. Someone had carefully crafted this identity. And Adrian, blissfully unaware, believed he had found the perfect partner. That evening, I went to a small cafe near her apartment, hoping to catch another glimpse without being noticed. Eliza arrived, smiling at someone on her phone, then slipped into a private corner. As she spoke, I overheard fragments of her conversation. She mentioned a trust fund, investments, and a deadline. My heart sank. Could this really be about money? Had to know more. Later that week, I followed her to a boutique hotel. She checked in alone but met a sharply dressed man in the lobby, someone whose face seemed vaguely familiar. They exchanged brief words in a folder, then parted ways. It was clear. Eliza's life was more complicated than Adrian could ever imagine. The man she met wasn't Adrian's friend. He was something else entirely, someone connected to a carefully hidden plan. At home I tried to convince myself not to worry. "Maybe I'm overthinking," I whispered. But deep down I knew better. My son's happiness was on the line, and there were too many red flags to ignore. I resolved to learn everything about Eliza before the engagement party, before Adrian's love blinded him completely. That night I drafted a plan. I would gather proof without alerting anyone. No accusations, no confrontations. observing from a distance, noting patterns, and connecting dots that others overlooked. It was delicate work, but I couldn't afford mistakes. Every detail mattered. And then came the twist that chilled me. I discovered a previous engagement under a slightly different name, eerily similar to Eliza's current identity. The fiancé had vanished just weeks before her wedding, leaving the groom devastated and financially ruined. My pulse raced as I realized the stakes. Eliza might not be the innocent woman Adrian thought he knew. She could be a master manipulator with a dangerous agenda. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. Time was running out. The engagement party was just days away, and I needed answers before my son's life, and his trust, was shattered forever. The day of the engagement party arrived, and my nerves were taut as wire. Adrian was brimming with excitement, completely oblivious to the storm I sensed looming over him. I dressed carefully, blending in among the guests while keeping a watchful eye on Eliza. She moved through the crowd like a seasoned performer, smiling, laughing, effortlessly charming everyone in her path. But beneath that polished exterior, I sensed a cold calculation. During the welcome toast, I noticed subtle gestures between Eliza and her friend, the one I had tracked to the hotel. A quick handoff of a small envelope, a nod that seemed more than casual. It hit me. This wasn't just a matter of deception. It was orchestration, meticulously planned over time. My heart sank as I realized Adrian's trust in her made him blind to the danger. After the formalities, I found myself seated at a quiet corner, pretending to sip my drink while observing every movement. Eliza approached, radiant and seemingly innocent, and I forced a polite smile. "So lovely to finally meet your fiancé's mother," she said, her tone sugary sweet. I kept my voice neutral, asking casual questions about her day, her work, but internally I was scanning, analyzing, calculating every reaction. Later, when she moved to the balcony with that same friend, my instincts screamed that this was the moment to act. I slipped outside, careful to remain unseen. They spoke in hushed tones, glancing around as if aware of being watched. Then came the shocking revelation. The friend wasn't just a companion. He was her accomplice, helping manage her financial schemes. I caught a glimpse of documents, bank transfers, account details, and a timeline that perfectly aligned with Adrian's upcoming inheritance. Fear and anger collided inside me. Eliza's plan was more sinister than I had imagined. It wasn't just about money, it was about control, manipulation, and betrayal. I knew I couldn't confront her here, not with Adrian so close. Any wrong move would alert her and push him further into her web. As I retreated inside, I realized the stakes had escalated. I needed concrete proof, undeniable evidence, something that would reveal her true intentions without destroying Adrian's trust in me. The engagement party was no longer a celebration. It was a ticking clock, and every minute brought Eliza closer to executing her plan. That night I sat in my car, reviewing every interaction, every gesture. The puzzle pieces were falling into place, but I had to act fast. Tomorrow, I would take the first step toward unmasking her. Not with confrontation, not with accusations, but with strategy, patience, and the precision of someone determined to protect the person they loved most. The twist had grown deeper. Eliza's charm wasn't her only weapon. She had layers, connections, and a cunning that made her dangerous. But I wasn't going to let her succeed. Adrian's life and heart depended on it. The next day, I arranged a quiet lunch with Eliza, choosing a public restaurant where she would feel comfortable yet remain contained. Adrian was away at a client meeting, unaware of the storm about to unfold. I greeted her warmly, my tone calm, almost inviting. Inside, every nerve was alert. As the conversation flowed, I steered it carefully, asking about her past, her friendships, and subtly probing her intentions. Eliza responded with practiced ease, yet a flicker of unease crossed her eyes when I mentioned specifics she couldn't have expected me to know. The documents I had gathered were hidden in my bag, silent witnesses to her deceit. Then came the moment of truth. I casually referred to the envelope I had seen her exchange with her accomplice, watching her reaction. Her smile faltered, the facade cracked, just enough to confirm my suspicions. She realized I knew, but by then the evidence was already in my hands. When Adrian returned, I presented the facts gently, letting him see the truth without shame or anger. His shock was immediate, but so was his gratitude. Eliza tried to twist the story, but the proof spoke louder than any lie. In the aftermath, Adrian thanked me quietly, holding my hand with a mix of relief and love. I realized that vigilance, intuition, and patience had saved him from heartbreak, and possibly worse. As I drove home that evening, a sense of peace washed over me. I had protected my son without destroying trust, exposed deception without cruelty, and learned once again that love often requires courage, cunning, and the willingness to confront even the most charming of predators. The ordeal was over, but the lesson endured. Sometimes watching from the shadows is the only way to shield those we love.